great ideas come from thinking about the message first.
Here's something that I think is necessary for all types of thought-provoking messages. I didn't think this episode would go to Barbie. Welcome back to another Toot Ramble episode. I'm one of your hosts, Austin.
I'm your other host, Richard.
Can authors truly be unbiased? This is a part of our mini-series that we have not been doing consistently, where we've kind of been going through the different categories that we rate about books. We went over world building with Jet Hearn. We talked about characters at one point. Did we do plot? We kind of did with Save the Cat.
Sort of.
So we're now talking about one of the categories that we rate and judge in a book, thought-provokingness. What we mean by that, the themes, the actual message that the author's trying to get across in a book. And this whole episode, Rich and I are going to break down if authors can be unbiased. How do you actually give a good message, not just a good message, but a consistent one and one that compels you, even if you agree or disagree with it? How is that done? And if you want that answer, just listen to Rich, I guess.
Yeah. How do you say something without beating it over someone's head? It's basically it. Like you can say the same message in two ways and it'll come across much better in one, right, and terrible in another, even though it says the same thing. So We're going to break that down. Why?
Rich, you're kind of a dick.
Yeah.
Or, Rich, lately you've been saying some comments and, some of them are off, but you make good points with those comments, but otherwise, sometimes it's a little bit off. You get what I mean? Sometimes you can get a little bit on the negative side.
I'm the wrong barometer for this because I respect the first statement more.
You would prefer the Rich, you're being a dick.
I've been complimented at work, and it makes me very uncomfortable because it feels dishonest.
Rich, you're doing great. What are your real motives?
It's like, you know what I mean? I prefer directness rather than like...
What are they saying behind my back?
Exactly. And when I'm going like, you're praising me too much, and I know my worth. Like, I know my value. You're giving me too much praise. I know it's fake because other people are saying like, you're doing fine.
This is actually...
I don't like that.
Not totally incorrect. If people to your face will say stuff like that, okay. Behind closed doors, they're either saying the same thing or they're saying something good, which is also neat.
Yeah, no. Again, I like straightforward people in general. When I get the feeling that you're being careful, walking around eggshells, and I don't like it.
What are you trying to get out of me for complimenting me? Like, what's your purpose here? What's your ulterior motive? What do you want from me?
Yeah.
Yes. But what do you think, starting this conversation with, can authors truly be unbiased? What we're getting at there is, obviously every author's biased.
Yeah.
But how much can that bias show, and how do you make a message that shows this author isn't just trying to preach propaganda? They're not trying to force it down my throat. Mm-hmm. Where do you want to start?
I guess what is a great example for you of clearly the author had a message and wanted to say something, but came across so well?
Oh, number one example to why it's a 5-star book, Small Gods by Terry Pratchett.
Wonderful. Small
Gods by Terry Pratchett. Not going to spoil this book. This is just concept, theme of the book. Terry Pratchett is an atheist through and through. Mm-hmm. Complete atheist. And regardless of my beliefs too, just I will read from religious Tolkien or atheist Terry Pratchett and love them both.
Yeah.
So Terry Pratchett is personal beliefs, atheist, no question about it. And the book itself tackles religion in the most honest, truthful way that makes both the atheist / agnostic all the way to the belief point of view, and has something so compelling about that because one of the things it does is recognizes that there is another opinion. And it kind of tackles the theme of religion, the theme of faith itself, and gives credence and criticism to both sides, while at the same time having a clear message to what it's going for.
Yeah.
But does it so well because it acknowledges them all, and it doesn't break the story to make it doesn't break the story and break the mold of where it's going to preach at you.
Yeah. It comes across as criticism, just like humor. It is done best when it comes from a place of understanding. If you don't understand the thing that you are mocking or criticizing, then it comes across as mean, ignorant, or ultimately preachy. Terry Pratchett, I think, understands, despite being an atheist, I think he at least is knowledgeable about religion and knowledgeable about faith enough to the point where he respects it enough to be able to say, like, there is another side, there's another set of beliefs out there, even though I think, hey, here's the criticisms, here's why I don't.
Yeah.
Here's why I don't believe. And so ultimately it does have a anti-faith message, I guess. If it's not even really anti, it's just a questioning faith message.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a good thing to not maybe it's a good thing to not go all in and never question your faith. But then it does have the other side of sometimes people can put faith into weird things that you don't think about. Of people can just like you can have faith in God, there are people that put their faith in science in an equally ridiculous fashion.
It shows that hyper-skepticism can also be ridiculous.
Exactly,
yes.
yeah.
That's why it shows that, and it acknowledges his own point of view in a way, and kind of pokes fun at himself too.
Yeah, exactly. It makes me think about all great humor. Like there's humor to tell people that there's humor outside your friend group and there's humor inside. Humor inside is almost always, from the outside looking in, more mean or more personal. It's darker humor.
Yeah.
Typically because it comes from a place of understanding and because you know that person has your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
Even if the joke is like really, really dark, it comes across as funny because you know they have good intentions for you. Where it comes across as preachy is like they don't know you, they don't understand you, and yet they're telling you how to think, and here's what I think.
You don't feel represented.
Yeah.
You don't feel like they're even acknowledging a person like you exists.
It's mainly, I don't think when it comes across as preachy is they don't understand me.
Yeah.
And therefore, why should I listen to them? It comes across as weird. Like, I'm thinking of books like Red Prophet or
by Orson Scott Card.
By Orson Scott Card. It comes across as incredibly preachy because I don't think he understands a lot of the stance of. So it basically tackles the idea of like colonial America versus Native Americans in like mainly the second book.
Okay.
And it comes across as incredibly preachy to the point of like, it doesn't even matter. His point of view, it doesn't matter because he breaks his characters, he breaks his world, he breaks everything for the sake of a message that I don't think he fundamentally understands. That there is no other side. It's ridiculous to even think that there's another point of view. That's where it came across as incredibly preachy.
Got it. Oh, I guess when there is a story like that, where I guess that author in mind, I haven't read that book, but do you think it can come across that way when trying to make a thought-provoking message and something that connects with the reader if they have attention to all writers, dungeon masters, and lore nerds?
We are honored to be sponsored by World Anvil, a novel planning, game design, character mapping site to help writers, readers, players of any project your devilish hearts desire.
At worldanvil.com, you can create an account for free to use their amazing tools they provide. As a writer, aspiring writer myself, World Anvil has tools to create interactive maps, family trees, timelines, and automatic linking that can make your novel ideas all organized into one singular place.
Personally, as a world-building addict myself, you can create intricate timelines of historical events, map out your world, and with their map creation tools, you can establish various cultures, histories, and lore with ease.
And you all know I love my characters in fantasy novels. World Anvil lets you create characters for both your D&D campaigns, and you can assign them certain stats, or just have an all-in-one place where you can assign your characters and map out their flaws, wants, and their needs.
And you, little listener, are one of these characters. You are flawed. If you don't try World Anvil, you want to try World Anvil, but you're like, oh, I have to like click a button and then set up an account, blah, 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 blah. But then you need to realize that it takes like 1 minute and the benefits you get from it are actually pretty good.
There's no harm in trying it out, as he astutely said. We highly recommend it. Again, try it for free. Build an account at worldanvil.com. Check our link in the description below to check that out. And if you like what you see, you can access more features by getting a yearly subscription for 51% off if you use the code RAMBLE. That's just RAMBLE. Use the code RAMBLE for a 51% off yearly subscription.
That's code RAMBLE, RAMBLE, at checkout for a 51% off a yearly subscription.
And check out the link in the description below, and we'll get back to the episode. Can an author start message first and go, I want to give this message in my story? Then can you get across that message in a good way? Can you retroactively go, this is my message, now I'm going to make a plot and characters, et cetera, that fit that message? Or do you think a better message would come from, I'm going to create a fun story, these characters with flaws, and then out of that, I'll discover what the message is? Or both valid. I mean, that's also a fair answer.
Again, it always is. It depends.
Come on,
it always
give
is.
something. Give some.
Fine,
meat.
make a declarative statement.
Yeah.
I do think great ideas come from thinking about the message first.
Okay.
I think it is important to think about it, but you don't let yourself get trapped by it.
Yeah.
Don't let your initial idea of the message break your story, and let the story develop on its own. If you think as the writer that, if I continue writing in this way, that the plot is going in a certain direction, it's going to break my message. Trust yourself and just go with it, because I think it makes it more authentic as a message. So that's
I
a
get
problem.
What you mean,
So
yeah.
if it's a more coherent story, even if you may feel that it's incoherent message-wise,
yeah.
I think it'll come through a lot better. And that normally comes from allowing doubt. If a story has a certain message and basically gives you no doubt that the message is wrong, I think it generally comes across as a bad story. Take things that have a very, very clear message, like I would say, 1984, Brave New World, Animal Farm,
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Tons of stories that have a very clear message, like you can very much teach it. The author had a very specific, except for Tolkien. I think Tolkien really didn't have a message per se. He had a story to tell, and it's inspired by his worldview, but he didn't have specific.
Let's say this for his
something to
message. You could bring it down to a lot of things, but one big one is temptation. And how humans, just as one, if there's a lot to break down, but
vice versus virtue.
He's showing that this is a bad vice, humanity turning into temptation, and how to overcome that, and can you overcome that? And
ultimately, basically that man cannot overcome evil alone, and that you need God. Ultimately, it requires divine intervention for lowly man to overcome great evil. But beside that,
no, that point, there could be a whole discussion on people that agree or disagree with your interpretation. There's a lot to
sure.
Like you just dropped a bomb of
I guess
that because that is one interpretation. Yeah, so there's a lot. But again, What makes it a thought-provoking message is how many different ways can you interpret it, and look, that's a whole other thing. But yes, as you were saying.
But 1984, maybe break it down and make it simple. You could make it more complex, but it's the idea of, a totalitarian governments are not good, and what the government will do to push its message and oppress its people, and the tactics and styles that they use, and also how your fellow man will turn against you in that kind of regime. Like that, the worst thing is that it's not that the government is the bad guy, it's that the government turns your neighbor into the bad guy as well. Things like that come across a lot better in the story because you see the neighbors, you see the people that would be the enemies, and you can have sympathy for them. You understand their point of view, and they're not completely irredeemable. They're victims of this totalitarian state. It's what makes it a lot more compelling, I think. Same thing with Brave New World. Am I making any sense on the side of, even though it has a clear message, it gives you sympathy and doubt for another point of view?
Can I use an example that might help with this too? Because you're
maybe
using
not sympathy and doubt. Sympathy or doubt is, I think,
let's
important.
break, because maybe that's the first thing when we're talking about what makes a good message is you're talking about something where the message is pretty geared and obvious. Of course, totalitarian overruling government would be. You kind of have a blatant. How do you give credence to? Look, the totalitarian government has a point. Look, the orcs have a point. So not to just give 50-50.
Thing is, that's not the sympathy. Like, you don't have sympathy for the government. You have sympathy for the neighbors that have been indoctrinated into this regime. That's where the sympathy comes from. Do you have sympathy for the orcs in Lord of the Rings? No. But I think you do have sympathy for Gollum. You do have sympathy for him. Of like how he's been turned. You have a lot of pity on how they've
mercy.
fallen. So there's something there of there's not, even though the message is clear, there's some kind of understanding of, oh, I could fall into this too. It's not, it's a little bit more humbling, I think.
To give a light example, to see maybe this is how a dark theme and message and a light theme and message, what they both do similarly, because I guess that's the first point. Before we get to the messages about, okay, how to make something that is ambiguous and makes you really think is when an author just has simple message geared and packaged really well. So Pixar, Coco, for a movie, for example, when you have a message from the get-go, does it help if you have a message that 99.9% of humanity will just agree with? Because what we're talking about, the Coco message of the movie being, don't look to your past and look to your family and cherish it and put family above almost all else. You know, family is important, the value of family. Like, that's something so many people can get behind. But why can, and then 1984, your example of government, totalitarian government, authoritative, oppressing you, bad. Those two messages are starting at a point of, okay, I agree. Now show me why.
Yeah.
So is that one way of making thought-provoking messages? Just start with a basic human truth. That, again, if you believe morality is objective, subjective, whatever it is, at the very least, either it's morally objective that family is of value, or subjective plurality of 99% of humans agree this is moral. So sure, it's subjective, but almost universally agreed upon. But you start with that, and then that's a way to, then it just comes down to how well do you execute that message.
Sure. I guess it's like the difference between a statement and an explanation.
Yeah.
Both have, you could just have a character say, family is all that matters. The only thing that matters is family. You're Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
Or you could have something like Coco, which basically states that, but then explains and shows you why.
Yeah.
1984, hey, totalitarian regimes, not good. Let me show you why. A lot of it comes from, imagine someone speaking to you. The attitude you get from a very preachy book or film is a person that we've all met, that person that will say something to you and go like, well, this is how it is, and I shouldn't have to explain it to you. This is just so obvious. Why don't you think this way? Like, you're an idiot. It's not my I shouldn't have to explain this. You don't like that person. That person is never going to win anyone over to their side. They're trying to make you shut up and just agree with them because they say so, and that they have some authority to say why, and ultimately won't explain their position. That's annoying and really condescending, versus someone says, hey, I disagree with you. I think you're wrong. Here's why I think the way I'm thinking. Explain to me why you think the way you do. And at the very least, just stating their position and explaining why is far more compelling and at very least open. At least you feel included into it, and they're not assuming that their position is so obvious that you must be stupid for not agreeing. Because they're going like, because you have to explain the issue means that there's possibly an alternative.
Right. So when you're talking about that's a lot of good points. So when you're looking at somebody and the author going to mass readership, because everybody's coming from a different perspective, do you think it's an easier job to start with that good message? And the way that you're saying it could be bad is you start with that good message to be like, oh, obviously people value family, so I don't have to explain this. That's a given. So let's get I guess what is the in between there? How do you make that message work? How would you make it? So is it that statement versus explanation, or what you're getting at is how would you make it palatable to somebody?
I think both good and bad messages need an explanation, no matter what.
Yeah.
So even if the message is correct, if you just assume that it is, and that, I don't need to explain this to the audience, that's the preachiness of it.
Yeah.
Even a simple message like family is important, or I don't know, honesty is good.
Mm-hmm.
think or the power of love.
Yeah.
If you just assume that that's true, then why are you even, if you're not explaining your point, then why am I listening to your story? That's kind of the problem.
Yeah.
Especially, this is a problem I think with movies more so than books, is I hate it when a movie basically, a character just says the message, just says the thing that's supposed to be the moral at the end of the story. It's like, it's lazy, and that's preachy. If they
Show
just
me, don't
say
tell
it.
me.
Yeah. And I guess show, don't tell. But what's the purpose of the story if they don't give you a why?
I like that too, because as you were talking about some themes, the power of love, instantly great examples and bad examples come to mind. And every single great example I'm thinking of, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, just one of great, everything ever almost. A lot of stories have love in it just as a core value. The ones that I'm thinking of that didn't strike me as much, some romantasy books came to mind. Well, okay, is that love or lust? Yeah. So you can kind of come with, I guess, all the examples I'm thinking of in my head when it's more of a simple storytelling method. ACOTAR, Court of Thorns and Roses, is a great example of that tell at the end, where, very slight spoilers for the first book of ACOTAR. Skip 20 seconds if you don't want to hear this, but at the end of ACOTAR has the love poem and the riddle about love and the answer to all of it being love in the end of the day. And it was just so heavy-handed at the end that you go, oh, that's... Yeah, I agree, love is good, but now I don't.
Now I don't wanna.
Now I kind of...
Love actually kind of sucks now.
It sucks big time. Yeah. So even when you have a good message like that, it could be handled so it could be so preachy or just so corny that you go, oh, come on.
Yeah.
So here's something that I think is necessary for all types of thought-provoking messages for the most part, and why it really hits you, when, especially to reflect on a book. When you look back at something that's the most thought-provoking, and I want to hear some of your examples because I think we have some similar ones. Having a theme, or multiple themes as well, let's focus on one for now, but having a theme that is consistent and kind of pervades over all the different plots, all the A and B plots, a consistent theme that, let's say the message is about love. The A plot story with this character and the other A plot and the B plot that's kind of building up throughout all of this, all of them, as they're going through the story, have hints of this theme in it. So a theme about, when we read Children of the Time, about survival. Let's not spoil that book if you want to check out our review there, but survival's in the A plot and the B plot. It's a theme about overcoming and evolution. And it makes
from
you
different angles, the same theme from different angles and points of view.
Mistborn talks about trust and faith. All the point of views have something to do with that, and it's just, that's why it's effective. That's why even if you weren't floored by it, you just have to appreciate that it was done consistently and well, and that when you think back to a book, instead of being jumbled with like, wow, this is done. Books can juggle multiple themes, but sometimes when you go for so much, it doesn't leave you with that, okay, can you capture in a word or two the theme it's going for? Typically when you can do that, I find it like that's when a book and a message sits with you, of just the author here, the storyteller here was going for something, and they made the plot, they made everything so that this will even help when you look back to a plot and you go, okay, why did that first act part happen? Why did the second act part happen? Often when you finish a book and go back to even the quote-unquote boring scenes, you can look back at those and go, oh, okay, it kind of just emphasized the journey and the message more. The reason that happened, it all feels justified because you're going, they're trying to hammer home this point. And for me, it just feels like a lot, they didn't waste my time. That it was everything comes together rather than if there's this superfluous kind of side tangent thing that happens, you go, why was that there?
Yeah.
Do you agree that
I do agree.
Yeah.
I want to add on to that is when you are writing a story and you have this message, a very important factor is that you don't change your plot, you don't change your character to fit your message. So it always comes across as broken and disjointed when characters make a decision they normally wouldn't have made. Like, it feels wrong. Of like, oh, that's a really odd decision. Why would they make that?
I thought I knew that.
And it's solely because they want it to fit the message. Typically, to me, that means that the message can be flawed. So that's in pursuing truth, telling a story and being honest with your characters, because generally, I think it's much easier to describe human nature through a story, and you can know when something works or doesn't, rather than like trying to state a very emphatic message. But as you explore it through a character plot, it becomes pretty obvious if you are breaking logic or you're breaking what would really happen. And so maybe an author starts in one place, and as the story develops, because they're pursuing an honest story, the message may change by the end of the book because they're pursuing truth rather than their own message.
Yeah.
Couple books I think have...
What are some examples? Some came to mind for me.
I think Hyperion, for me.
Yeah.
There's definitely you could take that book at a anti-religious
and again,
angle.
We'll give spoiler warnings if we're spoiling,
yeah.
so you can keep
listening. You
listening.
can take that book from a anti or pro-religious angle, either one. And some stories show lean on one side or the other. Mm-hmm. But I think it's in the pursuing of truth that you actually get to explore it and you get to see both sides. I don't think the author intended it to go to fence it as much as it is. So
yeah,
that's one example. Do you have another one?
So you're talking about message where you can see both sides.
Message where you think it shifted, like they meant it at the beginning, but by the end, the message seems different. Like, oh, I don't think they meant what they meant.
Oh,
movie example that I think we both kind of agree.
Yeah,
I think Barbie. I got something very different from what was intended in that movie.
That gave me some male empowerment.
Yeah,
let's go, kid.
No, I could write a dissertation. I think that movie came off as very not feminist, and I don't think that was the intention. But I watched the movie.
That is one thing, because the message is told in Barbie. There's a monologue at the end where the message is told. Yeah. But does it go? You can read into it differently as well. There, like you said, the dissertation. I want to see it, Rich. Well, I want to see papers.
Simple one. Barbie fixed Barbie Land. They restored it to their feminist utopia. All the Barbies are back in charge. Huzzah! We win the day. What does Barbie decide to do?
This is big spoilers for Barbie, by the way.
Yeah, spoilers for Barbie.
Okay.
She leaves Barbie Land. It goes back to the patriarchy world. Why? You just made utopia.
Because you got Kens.
You kicked out. You got all the Barbies back in charge, and you go, yeah, no, Barbies need to be in charge. Patriarchy, real bad. But now I'm also going to abandon Barbie Land. I'm going to go back to the patriarchy? Why? That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't fit the message of the story.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a good example, because what I got of that was like, Ken's a great guy.
Also, Ken was the most entertaining
Ryan
character.
Gosling helps because he was the funniest, and
they gave him all the fun lines.
Yeah, they did.
And that's more just they were willing, because he's a great actor, and they gave him the most to work with. Like, Margot Robbie did a great job.
Oh, yeah.
Like, she acted really well, but because that the story was going for a certain message, they weren't allowing her to be, I think, as silly as they were allowing Ken to be. And like,
she wasn't. Her character wasn't supposed to be as silly, because
exactly.
She's supposed to be perfect Barbie doll in that way. So,
and where Ken gets to really get emotional and goes into it. So it's very different. I don't know.
I didn't think this episode would go to Barbie.
I don't know.
This is great.
I watched that movie go like, I don't think this meant what they wanted it to mean.
Rich and I did the Barbenheimer. We watched Barbie and Oppenheimer back to back when those came out in theaters.
Yeah. No, that's the fun thing. I know exactly what the movie was going for.
Yeah.
You could put in the comments, like, I totally understand it. Totally get it. Don't think it came across that way. Because I think the director was actually genuinely pursuing an honest
look at this,
honest interpretation of the truth. And I think it went in a different direction than what she intended it for.
She told the story as it unveiled.
As
the characters did what the character
should.
do. Got it.
Exactly. She set up a story and it unveiled.
Unveiled?
It developed, I guess. Unrolled?
Unrolled. Yeah, unraveled.
Unraveled.
Teetered. Tottered.
Sure. God, we say dumb things all the time.
No, it's not dumb. Teeter and what?
Yeah.
Is that your message of this episode?
Yeah, probably.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Anyway, I liked the movie. It was fun.
It was fun.
It was a fun time. I liked it more than Oppenheimer.
Emotionally, maybe
I had more fun. Oppenheimer is an impressive movie, but like, would I watch it again? No. Would I watch the Barbie movie again? Yeah, probably.
It was really funny.
Yeah. So,
do you think what you said your book example is Hyperion for that?
I think so.
Yeah.
There's a couple others I could probably think of if I'm thinking more about it. Like maybe Sword of Kaigen is an interesting method where it kind of fences where I think you could take a bunch of different perspectives from it.
Oh, perspectives, yes.
You could take different messages.
I think it starts and I think it ends where the aim was perfectly.
I guess so.
Yeah. I think if we're talking about messages where, I guess when a book ends, so we have our ambiguous endings, we have our bittersweet, sweet endings, just bitter endings, the type of way it ends and leaves the reader thinking can lend itself to a different kind of message, of course. So if it's a bitter ending, it's making you think about more cynically and cyclical, all those kind of things. But I guess, is there an advantage of ending the book differently? So an ambiguous ending, what would the advantage be of leaving you with a message that it ends and then allows you to think, what is it trying to get at? Because I know we love those kind of endings. We are fans of those.
Fence-sitter books where the message can go either way leans great into an ambiguous ending. So for me, that's why Hyperion, the first book, works so well as a book one, and like,
gotcha.
You don't have to read on because I think it balances an interesting. It shows you both sides. I don't know. Ask questions, doesn't fully state its opinions right then and there, and then ambiguous ending.
Now, what I love about some ambiguous endings is some end in the point where you can be left with the book and go, good. Do I believe this or this? I think a good movie example is Tar.
Sure.
Tar, and so it's about separating art versus artist, presents a fantastic argument for both.
Yeah.
And I'm going, damn, but won't again, going to be very spoiler light on all this. So that's a good movie example, but some ambiguous endings, one of our favorite movies, we just talked about this last episode, Triangle Sadness, but there's other things. So Pure Nessie is a book example. Triangle Sadness is a movie example. Pure Nessie is a book example where there's a sort of ambiguous ending. So something's about to happen in Triangle Sadness, but for Pure Nessie, you're confused, like what actually happened. It leaves with multiple interpretations of it.
It's not an ambiguous ending, but it leaves you with a
multiple
ambiguous. Completely, you don't. By the end, the mystery of what happened
is revealed. Yes, well, but it's ambiguous to it. Was it real? That's the thing. What was it actually?
I'm trying to think. Like, it's not the ending is ambiguous. It's just
interpretation.
The interpretation of the book is ambiguous.
Yeah. So with those I think the fantastic thing about those ambiguous endings is it ends in a place where it doesn't just necessarily leave you on the fence sitter of like, do I choose this or this, like Tar does, which is, it does leave you on that of which one was more compelling. Those kind of ones with Pure Nessie or with the movie Triangle of Sadness leaves you to a point where you have your own interpretation and conclusion because you think that's what the book was going for. It basically cuts you off right before the final strike portion happens, or it leaves you with the scene that makes you go, okay, now it's your job to interpret it. Now it's your job to complete what happens here. And what Triangle of Sadness did, I'm not spoiling this, but what it does is I had an instant reaction of, oh no, this is what the ending is. for Pure Nessie, I had an interpretation of this is how I interpret it because some people did it differently. But the fun about that is the author did it so in a way that makes you complete. It makes you fill in the blank of here's what I'm going for, reader. Here's what I'm going. If you agree with me, if it comes to mind just like that for you, do you agree with the message? That's another compelling way of doing it. And the fact that other readers would get a different interpretation out of it just shows how genius it is to me because holy crap, I was able to fill in the blanks because I was reading it from this lens. But flip that and I'll read it a different way. Now that's how I interpret it. That's next level. That's kind of crazy. Yeah.
Now, do you want to actually answer the question?
No, I don't.
The title.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Can authors truly be unbiased?
Answer. No. Question mark. Like if you want to say, can authors really take themselves out and their personal experience out of everything?
That's what we got to talk about next. Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
In general. Orson Scott Card being a Mormon, it comes through in quite a few of his works, not every one of his, but it comes through a lot of it. It definitely has influenced or it has biased his writings. Some would even say Sanderson.
That's what I'm talking about. Mormon and Latter-day Saints beliefs, yep.
That his system of his world building and magic system of the Adonism and that individuals can take up shards of power to become godlike beings to get their own planet. Was that biased or influenced from his faith? Yeah. I don't see any other way, but does that mean
maybe that's the answer to the question? So can authors truly be unbiased? No, but it often doesn't matter.
Sure.
Because even if an author's biased, they can pursue the story in a way that compels you, whether it's in their bias or against their bias, because maybe they told the story in such a way like Terry Pratchett with Small Gods, of that way of, yes, he's an atheist, but I left the book going, wow, I'm compelled. It gave an argument for religion and an argument for atheism.
Yeah.
And so I was left going, being very compelled because he pursued the story even beyond his own bias, although he's a biased human like all people are.
That's the thing. An author can't be unbiased in the same way that everyone is biased and no one can escape it.
Yeah.
Because we all are products of our past. And so just like an author, their ideas for a story is going to come from their history. And what can you do about that?
What'd you say if you were to write a book and try to get a message across, what's the number one rule you'd have in mind of going, this is how, being acknowledged like, okay, I'm a biased person, what rule would you give yourself? Would it be stay consistent? Would it be go for something that shows both sides as we discussed? Would it be something what would it be?
Consistency of character choices, I think is the most important
what
thing.
You're getting at, yeah.
I know, like, completely different side tangent,
yeah.
But a reason why I don't watch Doctor Who anymore is character consistency.
Okay.
Doctor Who is, of course, one of my favorite shows before. There's interesting video, but a good example is season 3 of New Doctor Who has a couple jokes really quickly at the beginning that show off who the characters are. And the characters are in character making jokes at each other and throwing banter back and forth, but ultimately doesn't come at the detriment of the character. The character doesn't make a decision that goes against their pre-established development.
Yep.
Newer Doctor Who does that frequently.
And you think that is for a message? That's because they're trying to say
they're normally just trying to do a joke. They are willing to break the character for the sake of a funny line and joke, where that character wouldn't say that, the character wouldn't do that, but they did it because it was funny. Carry that further of, I think they also do it because the message or everything else about it, where the character consistency is bunk. To me, not worth following the show after that. And that was somewhere around in Peter Capaldi's era, but Peter Capaldi is a good actor, so I watched it. Everything after him, I'm not interested. I tapped out. So,
I have not watched. You only showed me a couple episodes from season 1. It was nice. I liked it.
I showed you a different one.
Oh,
I
you
think I
did?
showed you Blink, which
season is that? Oh, David Tennant's season, whichever that is.
that was season 3.
Okay.
Which season 3 is a banger season. Genuine, just
Well, maybe your
stuff.
rule from this, so maybe a rule to take away is authors are biased, but the more you pursue, even though if you're going to go for a message, the more that you pursue the story over the message, the better it will come out and the more compelling it will be.
Being more specific, I think character consistency,
Yeah.
not over story. Because like, what is the story? Is that the plot? Like,
Yeah.
As long as the character's choices are consistent and understandable, then I think you'll genuinely have a good story and the message will follow through.
Well, sometimes there's thought-provoking books where the characters and their decisions don't matter all that much for the story, that a lot of sci-fi type stuff. So let's talk about your ones where you're talking about more
Fire Upon the Deep.
Yes, that and
Characters
Children of Time.
don't matter.
It's not that their
much.
consistency is all there. So is there? I guess when I say story, it's trying to cover both the consistency of telling an honest truth, letting the story tell itself as obviously you're telling the story, but let the story follow a consistent pattern and don't break your prior rules. Will often, so character consistency for that. Maybe for less character focused books, it is staying consistent to the plot and the world building rules you set up. Don't break the world. Don't break the story. The more you just stay honest to that rather than going, wait a second, this is verging off of, I kind of wanted to make the story about the power of love. That's going off. Like, no, the power of love.
Can you think of another story that kind of does that? Like, I was thinking of, remember our review of The 1,000 Deaths of Arthur Ben?
Yeah.
Of part of our problem with it ultimately felt like character inconsistencies.
Yeah.
Of characters were only shown they were smart when the plot demanded it, and then they acted very dumb in other situations.
Yeah. That
it didn't feel like we were told they were smart, and it felt inconsistent.
Yeah.
Of if they were really smart, wouldn't they think this?
And
they don't. And so that felt inconsistent. I'm trying to remember what the message of that book is, too. Do you remember?
Oh, so, well, it's spoiled as part of the end of the book. So it does spoil part of it, but I think it's a part. Yeah, let's not.
I think it hovered around the idea of trust and honesty.
Was that part of it? Because I thought a part of it too was part of the 1,000 Deaths of Arthur Ben. It's kind of in the title.
Oh, yeah.
That portion of it, but don't want to. In case anybody wants to read that, we did review the book.
Yeah,
could check out there if you want to see it, because I'm sure we talked about it in there as well. But yeah, what was your point with that? Just
I'm just thinking of other stories that maybe broke that they were inconsistent for the sake of a message.
Got it. Thinking of a book that does that, inconsistent for the sake of a message. I could tell you right now. Oh, Name of the Wind.
How is it inconsistent and not just a message we disagree with?
Because, that's true. Because how to make it something that I just
because I think ultimately that's one level is we disagree with the message of the story on how Patrick Ruffus interprets
views the world,
views love. Don't agree. So we're starting off at the wrong place.
Right.
How is it inconsistent though?
So and again, we're getting to this territory here, but this message of the story is about how Quoth views love in a way. And there's more to it than that. And storytelling is a big theme in this as well. I think the way it comes across is he doesn't pursue that. The theme that I love the most from it was the storytelling. You are who you tell yourself you are. And exploring that more. I think he went more into his personal feelings about what love is and trying to get maybe a little bit of insert as well. But I think he went into the message of like, look, Quoth is owed this. Quoth is has no agency, and he kind of focused on that rather than the message of the story. What was there, the kind of genius in it that could have happened was how storytelling corrupts, but storytelling also gives you resolve to who you are as a person, and kind of that element of it.
Those almost seem like opposite messages of the power of storytelling. Is you are what you tell yourself that you are. That basically, if you get to tell your own life story and you could become it. That's very more uplifting and hopeful idea than you have no agency and that everything is not your fault.
I think there could have been something really interesting there too with storytelling. Maybe it just seemed like there was two different things being juggled and one did not fit the other's theme. So that, I guess that's part of the inconsistency. If I think he had something really going on there where Quoth was talking about his past and that past story of who he was as a kid. The power of songs, I guess, is another part of that interplay. But that had something there that just did not match with Quoth's character and his arc, which check out our review on Name of the Wind before we get too into that. But so I think that's where it would be. The themes didn't match. It seemed like he took a B theme there that overcame the overall message, which would have been the storytelling as a theme. So that, I'd say that is one.
Interesting. So
I could easily, I'll actually look at my book rating sheet real quick and see the ones that I rated lowest for thought provoking. So no one's read that book, so it's not even helpful to give something like that. But Another Kingdom, I just thought was very corny message. It wasn't even inconsistent.
Yeah,
I was just like, that's
yeah. Corny. I don't think it's an inconsistent message.
It's not.
It just is.
Yeah. But I think books, it's a lot harder to hate on messages because you have so much space and time to make it compelling. Whereas I can think of a lot more shows and movies that come across Corey, because the point you said of you can just tell the message at the end, or there's a lot of ways to screw it up, I think. Whereas books, I'm more lenient with a tiny bit.
Sure. I guess it's a limitation of medium where the problem with movie or television show telling you the message through one character, but then they're showing you something completely different.
Yeah.
That's where the inconsistency comes from. With a book, it's all writing and it's all telling you. So it's hard to get those things confused, which you still can do. You can have characters do something and then say another, and we're like, what the hell
was that?
Exactly. Unless the point of it is that men are hypocrites. I don't know. I guess that could be a message.
Yeah.
Still, a TV show or movie has an easy time being inconsistent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess authors really can't be unbiased, but they can pursue their stories in an honest manner.
Yes. And it seems like that. I guess for people out there too who want to comment about what are your favorite messages and stories, what are your least favorite messages? Do you agree with us on our?
Can you comment down below? This is the thing I'd be most interested in.
Let's see it. Yeah.
Is there a story's message that you were very interested in, that you thought was done so well that you ultimately disagree with?
There is one for me. I'll tell you after this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm curious what you think about it. It's
all right.
Oh, yeah. It's a juicy one.
That's an off-pod
It's
discussion.
a juicy one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so juicy that I have to think it might be a 5-star thought-provokingness, but
you disagree with the message.
Yeah, but it's just so compelling. It's like, wow, it's really good. It's just short. Maybe we'll change my mind about the subject. We'll
keep ours quiet just so we don't influence the comments. I want to hear.
The answer was it's Barbie and how Kens and men rule. We should have the patriarchy.
Oh yeah.
Come
on, true.
Like, come on, guys, let's get the boys back.
The boys are back.
No, there's an actual one.
Yeah, I know.
All right, let us know what you think about this whole discussion. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
So comment down below about. Yeah.
Oh, we forgot to do it.
What?
We got merch and things and Patreon. You can give us money and join a book club. It's fun. We forgot to do that. We need to plug our stuff.
That's our message. The message of this is join our Patreon.
There we go.
Get our merch. TutorRamble.com. Check Patreon link down below.
All right.
Thanks all.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.